Well, hello there, everyone. I hope you're doing well today. If you were able to recognize it, what was the moment that hooked you on tabletop role-playing games? Now, I'm sure a lot of people might say that it was their very first session. Some might say it was over the course of time, and no particular moment would jump out at them. Maybe it was just one particular campaign or adventure. And any of those are fine, actually. In fact, I'm sure most people would probably fall into those categories. I guess I'm fortunate in that I can kind of remember the moment a switch flipped in my mind and I was hooked. Now, did I know that I would be playing and talking about games over 40 years later? Maybe not. But it was the moment that I realized that not only did I want to keep playing these games, I wanted to start running them too. All right, so let's go back to 1983. It was the era of Stranger Things and a time when RPGs were kind of just hitting their stride. There was a cornucopia of games in the mainstream. Basic and Expert D&D was still around. Those I covered in another video. A lot of teens back then, like me, were drawn to the more grown-up advanced D&D. That was just the perception back then. Don't shoot the messenger. But there were also other games that were hitting the market. FASA's great. Star Trek RPG was coming out at this time, as was the James Bond RPG from Victory Games. There were also games that had been around a little while too. RuneQuest, Chill, and of course, Chaosium's Call of Cthulhu, which I think came out in 1981. And it is that last game, Call of Cthulhu, the classic game of eldritch, Lovecraftian horror, that is probably more than any other responsible for my lifelong passion for these games. One day, I do believe it was sometime in 1983, I would have been around 13 years old, we went over to my buddy Gavin Morgan's house to play a Call of Cthulhu scenario. It was going to be my first time playing. I had only ever played D&D up to that point. In fact, this is the box set that was on the table that day. If you want to see me do a flip through of what's in that box set, consider joining the channel, as that is an exclusive member-only video right now. But I digress, back to our story. This adventure we were playing was going to be run by our buddy Chris. Chris was a big part of my life from the time I started hanging around him and Gavin in 1982 all the way through high school in the 1980s. He was an amazingly smart guy, and we had a lot in common. He had a treasure trove of early RPG stuff too, including, I believe, an original 3-booklet set of D&D, as well as a ton of early Dragon magazines. He was naturally the most knowledgeable of all of us, and he was probably the smartest too. So naturally, he was the DM in our early days. But Chris had one foible, and that was that he was very lazy. He'd cancel games at the last minute, claiming he had shit to do that day or, just wasn't feeling up to snuff. So it was sometimes a struggle just to get something to the table as it happened, and usually it was D&D, of course. But we were a go for that particular day. Now, Chris was going to run an adventure called Pursuit to Kadeth. This one right here. This exact book. Again, this was Gavin's. He had bought it, and Chris said, hey, I'll run that for us. So he did. And fortunately, Gavin has kept a lot of stuff, whereas I was kind of stupid and threw away way too much early RPG stuff that I had. Now, this was, as I said, the first time playing anything besides D&D, so I didn't quite know what to expect. I just knew Call of Cthulhu was a horror game, and Gavin assured me it was really cool. So we settled into the kitchen at Gavin's house, and Chris, for once, seemed eager to go, so we started off the adventure. Like many Call of Cthulhu adventures, it started with us around a seance table. Well, our characters, not us. Along with some NPCs, including one named Nils. And I think one of the NPCs tried to hypnotize the party, all in the name of fun, too. Chris described the seance scene well, including when Nils started to freak out and eventually went into a temporary coma. Now, we had to take him to the hospital, make sure he was okay, and didn't quite know what to do from there. Our characters just sort of carried on with our lives over the next few days until we had heard that Nils had woken up and was apparently fine. And then we got wind of a horrifying bank robbery that had happened and included the murder of a few people. There was a picture in the Miskatonic paper that our characters saw about the robbery. And maybe it was the way Chris described it, or maybe it was just the event itself, but this probably is what hooked me. I can still remember it. The newspaper showed the arm of a police officer, literally torn off of his body, floating in mid-air about 5 feet off the ground. Now, I remember trying to picture that in my mind, and it just kind of blew me away. Again, remember, I'm 13 years old. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Of course, our characters had to solve what was going on. Was there a connection with Nils? Were there higher powers at play? What did that statue we saw in the seance house have to do with everything? Would we survive? Well, some of those things we would learn over the course of the session, and I believe maybe one more. Now, earlier I mentioned that Chris was pretty lazy, and unfortunately, we never did finish this adventure. But that didn't matter in one respect. I remember thinking about the mystery of the wrenched-off police officer's arm and what could have been responsible. And if it didn't quite light a fire at the time, it lit the pilot light. It also did one crucial thing as well. It encouraged me to start wanting to be a DM. Because we were starting to realize even then, though Chris was the best at it, he would only do it when it interested him. I figured I could take a shot at it, reasonably confident that what I lacked in natural ability, I could make up for in other ways. And here I am, 40 years later, still mostly DMing. Now, I learned a lot from Chris, even in those all too brief moments. A lot of what to do, and a few things, of course, of what not to do. I got the Star Trek and James Bond games that year, which I ended up running a lot for like one-on-one sessions with Gavin, because we were starting to lose players, and it was really just me and him that were interested in RPGs at that time. You know, and those games were my DM boot camp. They taught me how to be a DM. And as a postscript, I believe I ran Pursuit to Kadath 20 years ago, I think. It was when we were kind of taking a break, I think, between D&D campaigns or sessions or something, or just needed a change of pace. And it still is a pretty good one. I think it's one of the first third-party adventures for Call of Cthulhu. Maybe I just needed to get it out of my system. Needless to say, it wasn't the revelation it was way back then, but it was still fun doing it from the other side of the screen this time. So when I see this cover, I can point to a very special time and place in my own life. Well, that's all for today. Please let me know in the comments below, what was the moment, or perhaps moments, that hooked you into this hobby? I would love to hear what you guys have to say, truly. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to, at the very least, leave a like on it. Subscribe to the channel if you appreciate this kind of content, as well as a lot more. If you want to see exclusive content, like the original Call of Cthulhu box set flip-through, consider joining the channel as a channel member. That's always appreciated, by the way. And finally, remember to join us almost every Wednesday for The Lair. That's our weekly live stream where me and a couple of my pals, occasionally including Gavin Morgan, yes, we still game together, hang around and talk with guests as well as each other. And that is always a good time. We have a very lively chat. They always show up in force, and we love every single one of them, and we want to see you join them. So you guys take care, and until we talk again, goodbye. Hello there. I want to take a few moments to thank our sponsors who are providing you guys a very special discount just for being a fan of this channel. All the sites and discount codes, just for you, can be found in the description of this video. Our old friends from Neckbeardia offer a great variety of products, from awesome miniatures to supplementary RPG material, and even their own RPG rule sets. You just never know what new thing James is going to be cooking up over there, so make sure to bookmark their site and check back often. Crud Forge makes two great games that aren't afraid to poke a little fun at the people who, quite frankly, need a little fun poked at them. First is the quick and hilarious Virtue Signal, the game where you play a social justice warrior trying to attract followers to your cause before the other players can tear you down. Then there's the mammoth Portland Occupied Zone, or POZ. In this strategy game, you play as a complete disaster of a human being, trying to reshape Portland into a slacker Marxist utopia. Bring a few friends and warm up that throwing arm for some Molotov cocktails. Folks at Power Up Paradise are taking care of you with both a protective phone case and, when you flip it over, an ingenious Game Boy, which is built right into it. Go back to the golden age of video gaming and play dozens of challenging games that will delight and frustrate you in a good way. Mobile games are almost universally terrible, so why not take a step back when they did it right?
What qualifies you to be a U.S. Senator? You have 60 seconds.
Hi, good night, everybody.